And good evening, everybody, on this wonderful Sunday evening, the Lord's Day. We're so grateful that you're here with us here in the interview room. I'm telling you, folks, tonight, let's put our seatbelts on because we have one heck of a program for you. Let me introduce a very dear friend and colleague in the Cold Case Foundation. Those of you who are not familiar with our channel may not have seen Billy before, but man, are you in for a treat, I'm telling you. So a little bit about Billy Little Jr. He's a nationally recognized capital murder attorney. He's been received the Meritorious Civilian Service Medal in his contributions to the Navy Defense Bar twice. He's been a deputy chief counsel for the military commissions where he oversaw death penalty cases in Gitmo. He has handled 17 plus death murder cases in addition to thousands of other multiple homicide cases. He proudly served in the military for over 24 years. He was also a man of my heart. He was a Marine Corps infantry officer, which, you know, I'm a softie for the Marines. You guys know that. However, he was also in the Air Force as well. His military experience took him to Operations Desert Storm, Operations Desert Shield, Desert Storm, Kosovo, and Afghanistan. He's received many decorations for his military contributions to this country. When he got out of the military in a civilian life, he has handled thousands, and I mean thousands, of criminal cases. He has legal experience from all three sectors. He's been a judge, he's been a prosecutor, and he's been a defense attorney. He is also a proud member of the Cold Case Foundation and legal counsel for the Cold Case Foundation. And I'm honored just to call him friend, and he is my brother. And so with that brief introduction, if you want to see his entire bio, it's in a link below. But I know he gets embarrassed if I say too much about him. That's just how he is. That said, we are so grateful to have you here tonight, Billy, to give us some legal understanding of what's going down on this particular situation. How are you?
I'm doing great, my friend. Thank you for inviting me. And look, you and we're very close friends. We've worked on a lot of cases together. So we like to poke fun with each other. We'll laugh and smile and do things like that. But I don't want anybody, the subject we're dealing with tonight is so very serious that don't mistake, us talking as a couple of friends and colleagues and smiling at times. Don't mistake that for us laughing about the issue that we're talking about. Nothing here is intended to minimize or make light of the very serious crime that we're talking about here. So also another thing before we go on is we're going to be doing some Monday morning quarterbacking. And so I don't want this to appear to be too critical of the police because in a lot of ways, this work is a light switch. Did you make an arrest? Did you find the person? Did you solve the crime? Did you get an arrest? And have you got a conviction? And so with that plea agreement, that guilty plea agreement, they satisfied all of that. And so the light switch is turned, in my opinion. So mission accomplished. Thank you very much. Appreciate the hard work and dedication. And that being said, that doesn't mean that we can't have some lessons learned. And that's kind of how I view this. Like, okay, let's talk about what happened and see if we can't learn something about it. And that's, I'm sure that the police department did the same thing afterwards. They had an after action report and they did some lessons learned and they're continuing to grow. And they don't want to make that too public because pretty soon that's going to be something that, defense attorneys are going to use against them. But I know that they're continuing to learn and I know they are trying to do their best and they, got an arrest and a conviction in this case. So congratulations on that. That being said, let's be a little critical. that all right with you, Chris?
You know me, Billy. We call it the way we see it, and
Yeah, and
we've never dodged that. Go ahead.
that's real. Yeah, that's really what this is. It's just us being honest. And guess what? My opinion, I could be wrong. So if you don't believe me or like what I'm saying, okay, it's fine. Um, I get criticized all the time. It's fine. I'm still learning too. By the way, I learn from Chris every time I talk to him. So it's life.
That
But let's
not
be
much,
honest.
but yeah, I don't.
Let's
I
be
don't have
honest
too
for an
much
hour.
to share with anybody. Um, so let's kind of kick off tonight with, and of course I always let you drive the concept though of, so the police have come out post homicide and they have said, hey, we're not sure what a motive is.
Hmm.
And so
Yeah.
I want to approach this from your knowledge, experience. You've been down that lane. So let's first tackle the concept of motive from a legal position. What say you?
Okay, I'll do that. And the other thing, I didn't have time to put together a PowerPoint for this, so my notes I've written basically on the wall in front of me. So when I'm looking up, it's not me gazing off into the stars. It's me reading the notes I wrote down for this talk. So
Yeah, and by
please,
the way, everybody, also save your questions because Billy will answer your questions. Just highlight them so they get tagged with a star on my side so that I'll be able to pull them up as we go along here.
okay. So now I'm going to try to get through this because I don't want to bore people to death. So I'm going to try and keep it moving. So motive. Let's talk generally about motive. And one of the things people have a hard time understanding, and I do too. Why do people kill? Why would a normal person, and maybe normal is the wrong way to phrase it, but why would a human being want to kill another person? And for me, it comes down to three basic reasons. One is that they have a mental illness, right? An organic mental illness, the frontal lobe of the brain that controls their impulse control, that's been damaged. It's either been damaged organically or they got hit in the head, or some people say they had a high fever as a small child. But there's something broken in the wiring up there. And so they have an organic mental illness, right? That's one reason why people kill. It could be that it's a temporary alteration of their ability to make rational, which means it could be a drug or alcohol altered mind. And that could, cause somebody who ordinarily wouldn't kill to kill. And the last reason, and this is the one that I see the most often, to be quite frank with you, it is human beings who have been physically and sexually abused as a child. And that has a tendency to rewire their brain and may cause, some form of mental illness. But they had that show, Making a Murderer. If you want to make a murderer, you take a child and you physically and sexually abuse them, and they will not be wired right. Now, it doesn't mean that everybody who was physically and sexually abused turns into a murderer. People's brains develop and cope differently. We're born with different abilities and aptitudes. But whenever I would go and meet some murderers, especially some particularly heinous murders, I would tell them in the first meeting after a while, right? I said, look, it's not if you're physically and sexually abused as a child, it's when you're going to trust me enough to tell me that you were. Because I guarantee that you were, and I haven't been wrong yet. So that's how you make a murder. And the analogy I like to use is a dog, right? You take two puppies born from the same litter. You take one and you give it all the nurturing and love from the mother. You let it, drink from the milk from the mother's teats, and so it gets a normal upbringing. You take the other puppy, separate it from its mother, stick it in a cage, and poke it with a stick for the first 6 months of its life. And then you take those two puppies out and you turn them loose. And which one's going to be more likely to bite somebody? Well, it's going to be the one that was abused. I mean, that's common sense to all of us. It's just harder to transfer that for people to human beings, from a dog to a human being, because they're like, well, yes, but we have choice. We have freedom of choice. And the problem is when you rewire the brain, you're closing those doors. So the choices that we as rational people talk about They don't, although we say, well, those doors are open for them, in their mind, the way their mind works, those doors are no longer open. So their options are closing because they're broken, right? They were the puppy that was, hit with a stick when they were a puppy. So they're going to grow up and be more violent, and that can sometimes lead to things, especially the sexual abuse. That's so deep and hardwired in our brains. Once you break that, it's, in my opinion, it's unfixable. People have a different opinion on that, but you take hardcore child molesters, it's unfixable. Even the child molesters that want to fix themselves, they will sometimes cut off their own penis, but that doesn't fix it, because the problem is not the penis, it's the brain. So that's generally why people kill. Now, but what about in this particular case? What about, and I'm not going to refer to him by his name, but so we know who we're talking about, I'm just going to refer to him as BK. Is that okay, Chris?
Perfect.
Yeah. And
he's also got a number, but yeah, it's
that?
He's also got a number, 163214. But
Was that his prison number?
Yeah, that's his prison number.
163214. I like that even better. If I can remember it, I'm going to use that.
We'll just say 214. How about that?
214.
Okay.
So old 214. This, in my opinion, again, people can disagree with it, but in my opinion, it was clearly sexually motivated. There's a sexual, or let me put it this way, it's a sexual component to that. It is not that he went in there to rape somebody. It's that the sexual part of his brain is broken, and he is motivated by that. And I don't want to get too deep into the psychology of rape and murder, although we're kind of there. But they're not very far apart. If you find somebody that's a hardcore rapist, they're about, a heartbeat away from being a murderer. It's along the same spectrum. And this guy clearly, in my opinion, had sexual issues. And if he disagrees, he can sue me, and then we'll find out. So I'll talk more about that later. But why do I say that? So some initial clues that are pretty obvious to everybody is that, beautiful young ladies that he targeted, at least one that he targeted, and then the others happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. But these are just beautiful young people, and he murdered the young ladies. He didn't go out there and, try and whack me or you, Chris, ugly old men. No, he picked beautiful young ladies. And so I'm like, okay, now I'm looking for a sexual motivation.
And a kid sleeping, boyfriend sleeping, right?
Yeah, the boyfriend was definitely in the wrong place at the wrong time. I don't think he had any intention of murdering that guy. He wasn't there to kill that guy. He was there to kill this beautiful girl and girls. And so he did. But okay, so let's get a little deeper then. He was socially awkward based on, some of the interviews with his prior attempts at relationship. He was socially awkward with girls, and they just found him weird. And by the way, ladies, if you meet somebody and you get that creepy feeling, go with your gut, because you're right about 99% of the time. And so I think they had that sort of feeling about him. And so he was what they call an incel, which is he was involuntarily celibate, right? He's a goofy kid, and he's honestly wasn't that smart. I hear people saying, oh, he's a genius, whatever. No. The guy's an idiot. I've seen much better crimes carried out with much better planning. And he was not that smart. Chris, you've seen much smarter criminals. This guy was not smart, but it gives the appearance of intelligence when somebody is so hyper-focused on a particular issue. In this case, he's hyper-focused on murder, right? And so he does a lot of studying. That's what he spends all of his time doing. So this idiot, was he 214?
214.
214. So when 214 goes in there and he just spends all of his time obsessing over murder and crime, right? So he's going to put more thought in it than you or I would. So it's going to appear to some people like, oh, he's what a genius, right? No, he ain't a genius. This guy's a moron. And so then it's also when we get down to the weapon that he chose. Knives are personal, they're up close. It rarely, if ever, happens that, you get killed with one, like in the movies where you just go on one cut. No, it's a horrible way to die, and it's a horrible way to kill people. And then the multiple stabbings, sometimes there's, I don't want to get too personal, but because I know some of the families might be watching, so I don't want to describe what happens to the person too much. But I do want to talk about his rage, right? He had a rage that was, he manifested by stabbing, he had the knife on fully automatic, right? And that came from his rage. And rage is just an extreme form of anger. Anger, we know, is not a primary emotion. It's driven by something else. So an example I like to use is you're driving down the road, somebody cuts you off, and they flip you the bird, right? Now, you will see that, no. They cut you off, right? Forget the flipping the bird. They cut you off, and then you get angry at them, right? Well, your first thought or your first emotion was not anger. Your first emotion was fear, right? They cut you off, they scared you. But then in a split second, it turns to anger, right? So there's always a primary emotion in his. And his sexual frustration, his inability to be accepted by people, that he was too goofy, too awkward, too weird, too dumb, too ugly, whatever it is, was 214. That resentment, that hurt, right? A feeling of rejection, that hurt turned into anger. That anger, after festering and obsessing on it, turns into a rage. And it manifests itself when he does something stupid like what he did. So he also, there was some evidence on his electronic device, his phone, that he had some pornography. He was sort of idolizing.
Extensive.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Extensive, P.
Yeah, go ahead. Why don't you describe that? But that'll also add to the reason why I believe that this was sexual abuse. So go ahead, Chris.
No, you're fine, Billy. He had extensive sadistic P on his phone. A lot of it dealt with, women sleeping, and, basically it was Ted Bundy-ish. And this is exactly the stuff that he was into. Ted Bundy was into that. And he had, information on there. And he also had, pictures that were leaked, the Dateline NBC. We've not seen them yet. The cops are kind of mitigating that right now. There's still probably those photographs are under the gag order, or there's an investigation going on about the leak. Either way, he had this information on there, and the police are just playing it off right now that, he had a VPN, and he was technically savvy, etc. But they're not really telling us yet about the seriousness of the information that he had, which would fall into your assessment of him, that you're talking about. So,
yeah. And so the other thing we kind of have to accept as just a given. We may not like it or agree with it, but we just have to, sadistic. Yeah, sadistic. But we just have to accept that his brain does not process information the way our brains, the way a normal brain does. So there's some of it that we're not going to be able to explain it to you in a way that's going to make sense to you, because your brain doesn't process information the way his does. So when he gets fed information, somebody cuts him off in traffic, he may follow them for a month and then try to go and kill them. Whereas we would be just like, whoa, that was scary. Or, oh my God, the guy's a jerk. But he's not going to. And if a woman rejects him, he would react in the same way, right? But it sounds like multiple women have rejected him. And I'm thankful that the women before that rejected him didn't get his wrath. It had just built up and he obsessed on it. So it was definitely a sexual motivation. And I'll talk more about why law enforcement, the prosecutor, were reluctant to come out and say they had a motive, right? And we'll talk about why that's could also be a problem. But in my opinion, it's a sexually motivated murder.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
yes, good vet girl. Yeah, brain wired by obsession is not a rational thought process. Okay, but the nice thing about this is it's a death penalty case, or at least it was until they gave him a life offer. So that means that death qualified attorneys are going to be assigned to this case, and they were, and not just one, but at least two, maybe three. And so what happens in that process, I'm very familiar with because I've done it. And so the first thing that you do when you get that case, you go meet with the client, you start building a relationship with the client or the murderer or 214. So they had to go out and start building a relationship with him. They also had to start building a relationship with his family, with any of his support team. They have to build that relationship of trust, for a lot of reasons, like I mentioned earlier, like you need them to trust you enough to tell you, oh yeah, when I was 3 years old, my uncle, raped me, for a year or whatever, because they're not going to tell that to everybody. They have to trust you on such a deep level. So they're going to start developing that relationship. They're going to immediately hire.
Let's walk through that, Billy, just for a second, if you don't mind. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So you get a 214.
Yeah.
Okay. And the court says, guess what, Billy Little, you have 214. Go do your thing. How do you approach this situation?
It's almost therapeutic in that you approach them, because you will get, and you know this, Chris, probably better than me. You will get some stories that you're going to hear that are just like, you want to go, what? Are you serious? But you can't. So it's a therapeutic. You try to be non-judgmental when they tell you, oh yeah, I just killed my family because I believe that. I got to be careful what I say because I don't want to talk about real cases, but they'll say something stupid like, I thought my family were aliens, so I killed them, right? And you have to look at them and go, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. It's because if you start even with a look, even a hesitation or a comment, if they start thinking you're judging them, like, well, that's really stupid, that's weird, why'd you murder your family? If you start with that, so it has to be almost therapeutic. And it's a little bit, Chris, you do this when you're doing interrogations, right? Depending on the situation, you will get them to open up to you. And man, I've seen you do it where I'm like, Chris did that. I could never do that, what he did. Where you're talking to, for example, a child killer, and you have them, demonstrate how they killed that child. And you have to, if you're going to shut up, start going, oh my God, that's hideous. But if you want them to keep talking so you can get the whole story out, you do exactly what you do as a trained interrogator. It's fascinating to me to see you to be able to do that. It's a skill I don't have. I try, but you're much better at it than I am.
So you got him in a room. He's your guy. And because I think a lot of people are having a difficult time with understanding his defense team and how the prosecution handled it and how the defense handled it. So first of all, walk us through what a death penalty attorney is about.
Okay. And always keep this in mind. The death penalty team on the defense side has only one goal. That goal is to get death off the table, to get a life offer. So and they view that as saving a life. It's weird, but a life sentence for a death penalty attorney is considered a win by a lot of these death penalty lawyers. So, oh, you won, you got death off the table, right? But the training to become a death certified lawyer, you have to have done so many years as a lawyer. You have to have done so many homicide cases. You have to have done a death penalty case, not as a first chair, but as a second chair. You have to have so much training in death penalty defense, but you also have training in death penalty investigation, so homicide investigations, because you're required to you're required to reinvestigate a case from scratch. After you read the thousands of police reports, pages of police reports, you then start from scratch. And you're required to do that regardless of the strength of the case, regardless of a confession, regardless of whether your client tells you don't investigate. I don't want you to go out there and do that. You are required ethically to go do that. So you must become a good investigator in addition to being a good lawyer. And so the people you're talking about, these death certified attorneys, these are your top tier lawyers. I'm not trying to say that I'm a top tier lawyer. I'm just saying that it's a process. There's a lot of training. There's a lot of experience. And it's, it takes a lot of work to get there. And then it takes even more work to be good at it. But their goal, okay, keep death off the table, get a life offer. So when you develop that team, part of your team is going to be a mitigation specialist. This person will gather information from the family and friends, from the client, about what will be reasons for the jury to give mercy to this particular individual. And it's almost a mental health issue, but you're going to have to hire a separate mental health person to do an evaluation. Well, why do you do that? Because you want to include that for two reasons. One, you want to include that in your package that you're ultimately going to send to the prosecutor when you say, hey, look, why don't you give us a plea offer? And here's the reasons why. Because if we present this mitigating information, this mental health information to the jury, they're never going to convict them. Oh, God. Thanks, Angel Rock. But let me know if I'm boring the hell out of you guys, too. So because I'm getting a lot of inside baseball here.
No, this is inside baseball that everybody needs to hear.
Okay.
Keep going.
So you're going to immediately hire a mental health professional. That mental health professional is going to go meet with the client. They're going to do an assessment. They're going to do some standardized testing. And they're going to give you the profile. They're also going to talk to the client. Usually, sometimes you tell them not to talk about it. And maybe, people do that as they tell them, don't talk about the crime, don't talk about the crime. But they're going to talk to this mental health professional about who they are and why they're built the way they are. And after that, this mental health professional is going to prepare a report. This report is now in the hands of the defense attorneys. And either that report or pieces of it are going to go to the prosecutor when they ask for a life offer. When they do.
What's the name of that report, Billy? What would be the title of that report? The mitigation.
Yeah, it's a mitigation report. Mitigation request. It could be. You can call it thing. It's not like an official legal name, but you can name it whatever you want. But it's basically a mitigation report and an offer of settlement to the prosecutor. Now, if there is no report mentioned in that, and so not only is that mental health report out there somewhere, somebody has this document. It might be the prosecutor. It might be it's definitely the defense attorneys. Now, if it's not included, if elements of that are not included in the request for a life plea offer in their mitigation report, then you can bet that mental health evaluation was very bad, right? Meaning that the mental health person found that, oh my God, this person has ASPD, antisocial personality disorder, which jurors are not going to want to put up with. They have narcissistic traits. They're deceptive. I already say narcissist. I'm trying to read my notes now. But anyway, there are going to be indications in that report where it's like, oh gosh, we don't want anybody to know this, or everybody's going to want to kill him, right? They're going to want to give him the death penalty. So if it's not in the mitigation request, because it's been done, guarantee you 150%, there's a report out there. It may or may not be included in the request for a life offer to the prosecutor. And if it's not, that's even more damning.
And why would that be if it's not included?
Because it's going to scare the defense team so much, because they're going to see in there, antisocial personality disorder. Oh my God, nobody's gonna like that. When the jury hears that, and they will hear it if you try and get in part of the report and try and keep part of it out. No, they're going to hear it. So if you don't want that in there, you're not going to include that when you go in to request a life offer. But it's also why there's a standardized test that I ultimately stopped using. It was the MMPI, because almost every time with almost any criminal, it's going to come back that they're deceptive and they have some antisocial personality disorder traits, right? There are other standardized tests that they use. We don't need to talk about that. And I'm not a mental health professional. I just play one on TV. So, but that's important to know, that the motive is in a document out there, and we will all know what the motive is if we can get that document.
So you're saying, and you'd put 150% on that mitigation report, or whatever we want to title it.
Yeah. That report, 150% might be a low number.
Okay.
If it's not done, that means you don't have a death qualified attorney on the team.
Okay. And that will tell you, and that should tell us, and it would probably tell the family too, why this guy did, or at least does what he did.
Yeah. And there are times when, even though it's a helpful report, the report itself, when you read it, you're like, oh, when the jury sees this, then they're going to understand, okay, yeah, he is crazy. Now we know why he killed. And guess what? We're not cutting him a break. It's so bad, right? Sometimes you can explain the mindset of why he committed the murder, and it's very unhelpful. Not that any explanation, especially on a crime like this, is ever going to be worth anything. And some people like to say, well, he didn't get a pony as a kid. I didn't either, and I didn't go out and kill a bunch of people. So you have that thought process, which is, hey, I can relate to that. And trust me, if this feeling, this bloodlust of wanting to kill another human being, if somebody kills your family member, you're going to feel it too.
Right.
So it's just the darkest part of us, but it's also the human part of us. And so to act like we don't have that in us would be a little disingenuous, because it's there, it's buried. Most people don't think it because we're rational human beings. We're compassionate. We're not sociopaths. And I would also say that there's an element of sociopath in this guy. When you look in his eyes, you can kind of see it. And I don't know how to describe it other than I've seen it before. So I know it when I see it.
Yeah. I mean, you've been in the room with a lot of these guys. So
yeah. And I'm guessing you saw the same thing, Chris.
Oh yeah. Gary, myself, everybody, Coop, and I mean, top professionals around the world have all come to the same conclusion. And we'll get into what the cops say later, but so finish. Yeah. Keep moving.
Okay. So we know that the defense team is working for a life offer. We know that they have this mental health document that is going to give us the motive, the reasons why, but we know that nobody's telling us. Defense team is never going to disclose it for ethical reasons and maybe some HIPAA, medical law reasons. The prosecutor is not going to disclose it for a lot of the same reasons. So the only way you're going to get this is through a court order. You're going to have to convince a judge somewhere, hey, this is something we need for whatever the reason is, right? And so my go-to would be a civil lawsuit, because in a civil lawsuit, these 214 is not going to have any. Well, he still has technically a Fifth Amendment right, but it's not the same as in criminal. If he tries to plead the Fifth in a civil setting, then you can make what's called an adverse assumption, meaning you can assume whatever answer he was going to give you was going to be a bad one. And that's why he took the Fifth. And the jury is allowed to make that assumption in a civil case, whereas in a criminal case, you won't even know that he pled the Fifth. The judge won't even tell you that he pled the Fifth. It'll just be kept out of the criminal case. The civil case, the jury's going to know, everybody's going to know. Their Fourth Amendment protections are much less, much less. And so a civil lawsuit will get into that. And there are times when cases that you and I have handled, Chris, where I would say things thinking, okay, maybe they'll sue me and I can get involved in a civil lawsuit. And once I do, then I can, depose all of them. I have,
You
I can
own
get
them.
discovery and disclosure and all that stuff. So yeah, I want them to sue me. I would love for some of these jerks to sue me. Because once I get them in there, boom, they're toast. So you don't have all these other rights.
That's why we call Billy the sledgehammer, and they call us Starsky and Crutch. I'll let you decide who is Crutch. You're looking at Starsky, listening to him talk, but anyway, finish your thought.
We're both Crutch. We're both getting old, sir. I'm sorry. So that would be a good way to get it, but then you still have to go in and convince the judge that you need it for legitimate, and you can't file the lawsuit for the purpose of obtaining these documents. There has to be a legitimate reason for filing the lawsuit. You can't just be like, well, I sure would like to know what his motive was, so I'm going to file this lawsuit. Now, you have to have a legitimate lawsuit, and it has to come out. Now, is it a side benefit? Sure. But it would be unethical to file a lawsuit for the purpose only of obtaining this. So you would have to have a legitimate lawsuit, and you got to get past summary judgment, all that other stuff that let the civil lawyers deal with. So we know that the team is working for a life plea offer. And how are they doing that? Well, one way is they're going to file motions like you've never seen, motions you've never heard of. Remember, Chris, a case we were working on a while back, and we're not going to talk about other clients, but we filed so many motions. We were on the fourth.
Oh, you just locked up for a second.
This is motion B, right? So the motion practice for death penalty work is just unbelievable. And usually, and now that I have my own, giant thousands of motion banks, stuff that people have never seen, I get into a case, boom, I'm filing motions right off the bat. And they usually assign 4 or 5 attorneys on the other side just to respond to the motions that I file. So you're doing that for a lot. You're wearing down the prosecutor. You're trying to shape the battlefield, because they're not frivolous motions. They're motions that, and we can talk a little bit about that here, which is, okay, they destroyed the house, right? So there's a jury instruction for lost and destroyed evidence. And it's my understanding that the defense actually agreed in this case, and we'll talk about this in a minute, to allowing the house to be destroyed. So you're doing that. And in this case, they file a change of venue, right? You're just making it so difficult, and you're instilling fear in press. So lawyers are driven by fear.
Can I show you this here? Would this be inconsistent with what you're talking about right now? And this is, by the way, just 2025. Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Oh.
Yeah. And here, here is 24 and 23. Oh, that one's already taken off. But this is what you're talking about right here, that the defense was doing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And just for good measure, I always file an extra 4 or 5 on holiday weeks. Just let them enjoy their holiday. I guess that doesn't make me a nice guy, but
Tell. Okay. I love it.
So we got these motions, and so you're trying to instill some fear in a prosecutor. Both sides are living in fear. The defense and the prosecution both have enormous fears, and that's what drives attorneys. It's one of the biggest motivators for all human beings, but especially amongst lawyers. I don't know why, but there just seems to be a lot of fear in lawyers. And you'll see that especially in a prosecutor who may be afraid to file a charge, who may be afraid to file for the death penalty, who may be afraid to go to trial. And I'm not saying that's what happened here, that he was afraid to go to trial, but the trials are just a stress level that most people have never seen. It's, Chris, you've been through it. It's work. It's 7 days a week. The stress level is insane when You get done with your day in court. When you're in trial, you're not done working. You now have to go back and go to work that night. So you will be spent. There are people that have heart attacks during trials. There are people that have heart attacks immediately after a trial. I had a client who we just finished a trial. He dropped dead of a heart attack. I mean, these things are incredibly stressful.
How does money play into it from the state?
Money. They are so incredibly expensive. So just for the defense team, and this is not including appeals, this is not including, housing and food, feeding and all that stuff. I'm just talking about the defense team itself. You're looking at a minimum of $2 million per case on the defense side. And you can double that for the prosecution for the amount of money they put into it. So you're looking at the government spending a minimum of $6 million on a death penalty case. And it's pennies on the dollar to do a regular murder case compared to that. So although a lot of that, making the decision whether to go to death or not, a lot of that is a sunk cost. There may be a few $1 million of sunk costs because the prosecution and the police have already done their investigation. You can't get that money back. But to go through, and then you got to appeal, because you also have to have specially trained attorneys for the appeal, right? So if you get away, and it's going to take years and years and years, but that's if you get a death verdict. I can tell you, you know how many of my people are sitting on death row? 0. That's what they got for their money. That's what the taxpayers got for their money.
Why does that never surprise me?
Because I was afraid to go to
You've
trial.
also put a lot of people from that. If you're just joining us tonight, that's why we love Billy. He's been a judge, you've been a prosecutor, and you've been a defense attorney, and you've won in all 3 of those. So, I mean, I wanted the audience to get to know you from the defense side tonight, because I knew that you had a 0 sitting on the up in the concrete house up there. But so let's pick it back up with the fear. Why is that so critical for the prosecution here? And why do you pick up on that from the defense side, hypothetically?
Yeah. So if you get a sense, and as a prosecutor, you should never show fear, right? Because it's a little bit like an animal. If you smell fear, then you go in for the kill. If you smell fear, now we're going to double the amount of motions, right? We're going to increase the pressure. We're just going to keep pushing the offensive. It's a war, really. You can plan it out just like a war. You can game plan it. If you see a weakness, if you probe the lines, you see a weakness, you drive through that. You may find an issue that they call it playing for the fumble in the courtroom. So sometimes you don't have an issue, but you're pushing. You're trying to poke the football out. Boom, football pops out. Now you got an issue that you didn't have. So you're playing for the fumble. But this fear thing is absolutely driving every attorney that you talk to, and I don't care who they are. If they don't have any fear, they're probably not going to be an effective attorney, because there's a time after you do this, and Chris, you've experienced this too, that when you've done it for a while, the fear starts to go away, and when it does, you lose your edge. And when you lose your edge, either take a break or get a different job, because you're not going to be nearly as effective. You need that fear to drive you, but you don't want it to be a crippling fear. So if you can force a prosecutor to go, oh gosh, we have some issues in this case, and I don't know that, I'm not entirely confident that I can win and get the death penalty. So then that seems like, and I'm not criticizing the prosecutor in this case. I'm not, but that seems to be, that's where we're at. And so then they make a decision like, okay, well, this is good for the community, it's good for the family. So they make that decision. Now that decision should have been discussed in person and not in a, hey, here's what we're going to do fashion. It should be, hey, how do you feel about this? So one of the things the defense team will do from early on is start preparing that 214 to accept a plea. You got to get them to trust you. And you don't want to go on day one and go, hey, let's take a plea, because they're going to fire you and you're not going to get anything out of them. You'll destroy your relationship. You have to wait. It's got to be the right timing. And the same with the prosecution. They have to have that relationship with the victims, right? You have to have a personal one-on-one relationship with these victims. So when you go in there and look them in the eye, which you should do every time, look them in the eye and say, listen, here's what's going on with this case. And you can even be honest and say, I'm worried that even if we go through this process, we may or may not get a death verdict. And we may or may not even get LWOP, life without parole, right? It may be like 25 to life. He may be eligible for parole in 20 years or 25 years, right? So, but we can get a guaranteed life and he never sees the light of day with this plea offer. And they look you and they sit you down and then they ask your opinion about that. Because yes, they have the constitutional right to make that decision for you, but that's not how you handle victims. And the victims in murder cases are always the family. That's I'm going to continue to call them the victims, even though we know that the initial victims were the deceased.
Yeah, and that's interesting you bring that up because that's essentially what happened here, that you had some families who were ready to get it over with, move on, let's get out of here, take the deal. And you had others, like Steve and Christy and their family and the Goncalves family, Kaylee's parents, they're like, no, we want this guy on death row. We don't want to go with this. And the prosecutor sent them an email with an attachment and probably a phone call behind it saying, hey, this is what you're looking at. Had you ever heard of that before in your experience? I mean, you've been in this game for 40 years. How long you been doing this? A long time.
I've heard, yeah, I've done a long time, but yeah, I've heard a lot of stupid things and people, we have to do better with these victims, right? We need better, and I'm not criticizing victim advocate. We need good, strong victims advocates. And we need good, strong victim training with the police department because, and I would view it, if I had to explain it to them, like view it as a therapeutic relationship, like I was talking about earlier. Like, listen, they're going to be upset. If they yell at you, if they cuss at you, if they're upset, yeah, sit there, take it.
Yep.
That's your job. That's what you signed up for. These people are hurting and they want some justice and they don't know. They've never been through this before, but you have. You're the voice of experience, right? And that's we're gonna get to that here too in a minute. Like that's we might have been lacking in some of that here, but law enforcement, victim advocate, you must do better with treating these victims. And you and I, Chris, just did a case not that long ago. Same thing. They basically shut out the victims. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
That's not how you treat human beings who are going through the worst thing in their entire life and something that they will never get over. And you're going to treat them like this? No, it's not acceptable.
Yeah.
So, gosh, I don't know where. No, I got sidetracked off of my little handwritten sheet.
No, that's all right. So we had fear.
Oh, fear. Okay, perfect.
Fear in the eyes. Yep. Go ahead.
Perfect. So, and that fear, so you have both sides have gone through this. They've identified this as they get closer to trial, maybe 6 months out, right? You now identify your strengths and weaknesses. Maybe you've already done it. You're doing a reassessment. And now what are the strengths and weaknesses on this case? You don't do it alone. You do it in a team setting so people can help you brainstorm what are the strengths and weaknesses. And weaknesses, when the weaknesses start getting high, guess what? Your fear goes straight up with it. And so you're going to make decisions that are emotionally based rather than rationally based sometimes. And then, so when you're identifying the strengths and weaknesses of the case, now we're back to the point that you actually started with, Chris, which what are some, and there are more than 5, but what are 5 issues in this case that could have been a weakness for the prosecution? And essentially, Chris, the question you asked me was, could they have gotten a conviction if they had not gotten the DNA evidence? A very complicated question that a person only with your experience would ask, right? Because it's complicated. Like there are cases that we deal with where there's no body, right?
Okay, so let's play. Okay.
Yep.
So and I'm going to come at you from because you know how I am. from the investigative analysis aspect and throw it at the wall. And you can either grind me to the ground or you can say, you know, I don't know about that one. Because, and by the way, for the record, everybody, I've been on the stand where Billy has been questioning, and I've watched him in trials, and I've had the privilege to testify with him in the courtroom. And I'm telling you that I'm being very gentle when I say he's the sledgehammer, okay? Because I have watched people just go, oh my gosh, and then turn to the jury and watch them just, you can see the witness start to bleed. This is hypothetical and it's a joke, but at the same time, you know, he's got this gift of power with words. And so if I was one of the first responding officers and I showed up, and I'm just going to show you a report here real fast. I'm just curious what you would have done with a witness like this, who, by the way, happens to be a captain in the police department. His name is Captain Barrett. This is report number 123 from the documents that were just released. If this Captain Barrett went and called the University of Idaho Dean of Students, because he's looking for information, that's not a problem, okay, trying to identify who the victims are, and he goes to the campus, you know, because that's where, you know, he wants to go. But then at 2:00 in the afternoon, he goes back. Let's see here. Hang on for a second. And he has a meeting with at 14:15 hours, 2:15 in the afternoon. He meets with the president of the university and his staff in his office on campus. Now, this is 4 hours after the victims are discovered. And he tells them about the homicide and that the suspect's location and identity remain unknown. How would you handle this guy?
Well, you know that you heard this saying, like if you've been playing in a poker game for a half an hour and you don't know who the patsy is, it's you. That's the university had their own agenda, right? They had their own, you know, yes, of course, it's a soup, right? It's not one single agenda, but their agenda is to help provide a safe community, to help solve this crime, to, you know, help the police. But their other agenda is protecting the university. And you just invited somebody with an agenda that doesn't marry your agenda, unless the police department is also in charge of public relations for the university. Their agenda is not yours, right? They're not. I view the law enforcement agenda, the investigators on these cases, and Chris, when you and I do this, I view that as an altruistic calling in life. You're not there to do a show, a YouTube show. You're not there to make money. You're not there to be a big shot. You're there because you want to help the community. You want to protect the community. You want to investigate these crimes. You want to solve them. You want to help people, right? You don't have any agenda about running a university or protecting, you know, well, if people think it's unsafe to come here, then they're going to, right? Because you're going to, if you start dragging those people in on the inside of your team, people with agendas that are not yours, it's going to affect your thought process. So, but the fact that he goes to the university now all of a sudden and invites them into this case, you also have just opened up a whole new line of questioning, but a whole new line of discovery, right? I want every piece of information that you exchange with them, right? I want every email, every written note. I want to know every name. I'm going to talk to every single one of them. And then when you get on the stand, I'm just going to, you know, feed you lunch right there in the first half hour of your cross-examination. And then it's going to go downhill from that.
If you read that in the report, which you just did, we just saw, is that, and let's say gold, silver, copper. Okay. Which element is that particular paragraph?
Well, you're not going to get on the winning stage. You're not going to get gold, silver, or bronze on that one. You're going to be dead last in that race. And look, I understand you're going to want to go and talk to it's on the university, it's the university students. You're definitely going to want to let them know. But by God, you better have a closer relationship with the victims than you do the university. Your loyalty.
And by the way, they had not met with the victims' families yet before they went to the university.
No, your relationship has got to be much stronger, and you got to be on the same page with the victims and not carrying the water for the university because you've been playing poker too long and you didn't know who the patsy was. Look in the mirror. They're going to push their agenda. Doesn't make them bad people, but it makes you like a little naive to bring them on the inside circle.
Yeah. Okay. And now there's a gag order later on down the road, right? And everybody's under that gag order, but that university. Okay. And there's a handbook written. Okay. And on page 335, you can't make this up. On page 335, so everybody can read it. The university tells us, okay, that, and I'm going to quote, the teams work to get Moscow Police Department the information needed to conduct the investigation, prepare talking points for press conferences, and responding to media requests for information and interviews with university personnel in limited cases. Okay, so now, there it is, right in front. Everybody can read it to the world. So essentially, the way I'm taking this is two things. The school knew first, and then they set up a press relationship with the university.
Yep.
How would you have handled that in a criminal trial?
That's
gone to court.
Yeah, I mean, what are the school's motivations? They want to make sure that they don't hurt the image of the school. They want to make sure the students feel safe, which is okay, right? We want to feel safe. They don't want their reputation to be damaged. They don't want people withdrawing their children from this school. They need to protect that school because we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars of money that they would lose. So they have to, that's their agenda. So whenever they work with the police, they're going to be pushing that agenda. And especially when their communication teams talks to the police, well, you should say this and that and this and that, right? To try under the guise of helping them. They're really helping themselves. Yeah. I'm not trying to say that they're, bad people or nefarious. It's just understanding what their mission is, right? To protect the school and to protect the students, right? I'm not slamming the school for that. And I get that that's part of their motivation, but they also need to make sure they protect the university. So
yeah, and this is the co-author, and the name of the book is the University's President's Crisis Handbook. Okay, while the murders were going down,
yeah, and so even look, man, this is another thing that drives me nuts. You take these tragedies that happen to these families and you try to make a buck off of it. You try to write a book. You try to feed your ego and feed your bank account. Come on, man. Go do something else. Write a book on something else. I don't care. We're not here to make money off these people. We're here to help them, right? But that's not the university's goal, right? It's the police department's goal. That's a prosecutor's goal. Their motives are altruistic. Talk to these universities. You have to talk to the university, right? You have to,
yeah.
But you don't need to draw them on the inside circle. And it's embarrassing when you're closer to the university than you are the victims. That's just unacceptable.
Yeah, and so I never ever in my career, and I've had a lot of murders, as you know, where people have been killed in restaurants, for an example. And you go to corporate and you sit down with corporate and you talk to them and say, give me a little insight, yada, yada. and you say, thank you so much, but you do not bring them and debrief them and allow them to be part of the investigation. Because I have always viewed a guy like you, sitting on the stand, and I'm sitting at the table watching this catastrophe go down, where you hear the first question is, so what police academy did you attend? None. I'm a professor. Okay, well, professor, what law enforcement training and experience do you have? And the list goes on, because I've watched you and have been in front of many people that go, well, that didn't go well. One of the best things,
no, go ahead. I know where you're going.
No, I want you to tell the story, about.
I'm sure it's the bib, right?
Yeah.
It was, well, it's easier to work with you, Chris, for a lot of reasons. One is you are what you see, right? You're an honest guy. You're upfront. You're doing this for good reasons. And so you're an easy witness if you're on my side. You're an extremely difficult witness if you're on the other side, because the worst thing, and it's a sign of inexperience, the worst thing an investigator can do on the stand is try to hide their inexperience by fudging a little bit. You fudge a little bit, it's going to be a long day for you, sir. But you're not that guy. You're like, yep, that happened. Well, could you have done this? But yeah, I guess I could have done that better. What else? It doesn't have anything to do with the fact that, this guy's sitting over here, 214, that he, brutally murdered other people. But I guess I could have done that little piece differently. Yeah, you're right. But yeah, if you get an honest police officer up there, and 99% of them are very honest people and good people, but you get one who's out of fear of public embarrassment, which you can use against them, fear of being made to look like a fool in front of people, you tap into that fear on them, you're gonna just shred them, and their credibility is going to be toast. And in this case, well, do you always go to inexperienced people and invite them into the case? Do you always go to people? And did you take any money from these people? And so you're going to, which I think they did, or took money from somebody. Somebody threw money at them.
And so if you look at this now, number two, let's go to number two for a second. Okay. I think we established you would have, if this would have gone to trial, I could have seen the defense absolutely taking this paragraph and just running for probably a day or so. I mean, I'm teasing, but at least an hour or two, it would have had traction. As they say in the news business, this story has legs. Okay. Now, if we go back to the front of this same paragraph or the same report with the captain, he says, I called Chief Fry, Captain Lanier, Captain Dellinger to let them know about the homicide. I called Detective Sergeant Lawrence, told him about the homicide, and asked him to call in detectives. Great. That's what we do. That's the way to go. Sergeant Lawrence said he would call in Sergeant Blaker and Corporal Payne to assist as well, because they were slated to rotate into detectives soon. Okay. So the guy who becomes the case agent, Corporal Payne, was slated to rotate into detectives. He wasn't even a detective. How would you have handled that?
Well, so you're going to crush him on the stand. He doesn't have the training or experience to handle this case, and the poor judgment to place somebody with no training or experience. Not, he's got police experience, but never done this kind of thing. It's a little like when I was talking about the qualifications for a death penalty attorney, right? You have to handle a lot of variety of cases, a lot of other type murder cases, and then you have to sit there and learn from somebody else before you can actually, put your big boy pants on and go and do the thing for real. You and I, Chris, we handled a case, God, I don't remember, a few years back, but the investigating detective was so new that his card, they didn't even have time to get him new cards. So he put white out and wrote in detective. Like, that's how new he was. He still had white out on his business cards. Yeah, and you get that guy on the stand, and so then the temptation for him would be, and you're going to want to try and get him into this spot. Temptation is to fudge a little bit, because he doesn't want to be embarrassed. He's got an ego, just like we all do. He's not going to want you be called out for not knowing anything, not ever having done this before. So he's going to allow that to fudge just a little bit. But once that you start going down that road, you're toast. You're going to get lit up, and the jury's not going to know whether to believe or not believe you. They may totally discount your testimony. You might as well just shut up once you start doing that.
Yeah, and the irony here to this, Billy, is the new spokesperson for the case is now this lieutenant from Idaho State Police. Somehow he's been christened the new lead investigator, and he's out there on his public relations tour for the governor's office, basically, saying nothing to see here, keep moving on. And we're going to talk about that tomorrow on the channel. We're going to, I'm going to be a little more gentle, but in the beginning, you'll see here in this paragraph, Lawrence said he was calling the Idaho State Police to ask for Region 2 detectives to process the crime scene. Their initial response and engagement in this was to work the crime scene through the lab. It was not to, quote, now be the lead investigators in this particular homicide case. And so that's number 2, but it gets better.
Yeah, you've already got a command and control problem, not just experience problem. You got a command and control problem now.
Do you have your seatbelt on for a second?
All right. Well, I mean an airbag or just a seatbelt?
Probably both. Okay. So this is the first officer who responds. Let's see here. Number 3, that is Officer Nunez. I'm not going to go through the details here, but this is his body-worn camera. And he's basically, this is the initial narrative. Okay. So he goes through the house, he gets there, etc. He's clearing up the house. I'll just point out on this one that he inadvertently allows Hunter to come back into the house. And Hunter was the RP, one of them. And he comes out of the bedrooms with a second officer who had responded, and they find Hunter sitting out in the living room, and they basically kick him back out and take him downstairs and say, at this point, you need to wait outside. Okay. After the house is cleared, the cavalry is on their way, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more. He is given an assignment. And one of the witnesses has said, hey, the suspect walked out this patio door in the back. So if you caught this report, Billy.
Oh, boy.
And you see in the southwest corner a log, an entry log into the crime scene with Corporal Lanier, Officer Warner, Officer Nunez, Sergeant Gunderson, Corporal Payne, Smith, Idaho State Police Detective Talbot, Prosecutor Ashley Jenkins, Corporal Payne, Officer Smith.
Oh, you cut out. I don't know if that's my computer or yours.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I got you now.
Okay, sorry.
15 seconds.
Corporal Payne, Officer Smith, ISP Detective Talbot, Prosecutor Ashley Jenkins, Corporal Smith, Talbot, yada, yada, Officer Morris, Officer Nunez. And then at 21:15 hours, you realize, holy crap, this is the way the guy came in and went out. Maybe we should move.
Yeah.
And you go through the front door.
Your procedures, if that is a procedure in your book there at that police department, you need to change it. If that's how you handle crime scenes, you need to change it. And I'll use an example of another case that you and I worked on, Chris, where they had stomped all over the scene. And in this case, particularly damaging because there were footprints in the snow, and there was evidence. And once you have secured the scene, meaning, you don't believe the threat is still inside, people inside are dead, they don't need, medical help, lock it up, right? Lock it up. I don't care who you are, chief of police, mayor, I don't care. You're not getting on that scene without getting permission and having an actual stated purpose for being there. Because when you get a scene like that, what you get, it looks like here too, a bunch of officers who just want to see, natural curiosity. If you are in charge of that crime scene, you have an entry control point and a log, which they did, but you better have the right dang entry control point. And it can't be the entry and exit way that the criminal, the 214, used, right? Because you need that as pristine as possible. Again, going back to a case that you and I worked together, going through the photos, and you're much more detail oriented than I am, but you see the weapon at one point leaning up against a bumper, right? And this was the crime scene photos. You see a weapon leaning up against the bumper. You fast forward a few pictures. Now all of a sudden the weapon is laying on the ground. And go forward. Now it's gone. Now it's back. I mean, who is in there moving stuff around and stomping all over the crime scene and stomping all over the evidence? And if you're in charge of that crime scene, I don't care if the mayor comes in himself, if the president of the university comes in. No, you cannot come in unless you have a stated purpose for why you are here, what you're going to do, because I'm going to have to explain it to some stupid defense lawyer and a jury why I was in there contaminating that crime scene.
Yeah, I mean, homicide 101, right, Billy?
Yep.
If you, as the first responding officer, go on the scene and everybody's standing out in the parking lot, the kids, and they say they're in there, and you go in there and you discover 4 dead people, which door do you go in and which door do you go out? Right?
Well, first of all, I don't go in and out the same door that was used by the criminal. And that should have been obvious in that there were footprints in and out.
Yeah, I mean, you have a witness who says he went out that door. I saw him leave that door.
That is now locked up. Nobody can walk in that area. We got tape. We got people guarding that. You do not cross that line. Preserve that so you don't miss evidence or contaminate evidence. Again, people, if there are cases that, I've worked on, if the police are in there and you don't know whose footprint is what, now you got to go and get shoe impressions from every one of those officers, right? And try to match them.
That is a great question, or that's a good point. And I have not seen an evidence list yet that shows a shoe log.
You also, especially in this case, we talk about DNA, you also have to get the DNA from all those officers to make sure that it's not their DNA that's on the crime scene.
Well, and if you look at this at 16:28, 4:28 in the afternoon, he returns back to the house and he secures the southwest patio entrance. I took responsibility from Officer Warner in documenting who entered the exit and exited the residence. So they are using this as the point of entry into the crime scene.
Nope.
How would have the defense played this out?
Oh, I would have dealt with it in about 50 motions beforehand. And then when we get into trial, if I don't have, what I need to be precluded from trial, then I'll deal with that when they get on the stand. But they contaminated. And again, a case you and I worked on where I had the investigation manual broken down into chapters. And every time they violated their own investigation policy, TTP, tactics, techniques, and procedures, and they will admit it because they have to, right? But I just walked over to the trash can and had that chapter from their own investigation. I just walked over to the trash can, threw it in the garbage. I did that on every chapter, right? Until the point it's like, oh my God, these guys didn't follow their own procedures. They didn't.
I used to love when you would hand them a piece of paper and a pen.
Oh, a highlighter.
A highlighter. Yeah. And the reason we're bringing this up tonight, folks, is not to say, oh, wow, look at us. Okay. Not at all. That's the opposite of why we're here. I take exception to the fact that post homicide, everybody's running around saying, look at us. Okay. Yes. But my question is, if they did not have the DNA, if they didn't have the DNA on Brian Koberger, could they have put together a solid enough circumstantial case to convict this guy of death and throw him in death? Go ahead, Billy.
It's a complicated question. I'll do my best to answer it in a way that doesn't sound like, I'm being a law school professor. So as you know, Chris, I like circumstantial case for prosecution because you're telling a story. Circumstantial cases tell a story, and you're required to have so many witnesses that by the time, the defense accuses every one of your witnesses of being a liar, by you get a fourth or fifth witness, the defense team has lost credibility. So I like circumstantial cases. Some people believe they're more difficult, and they are a little more complicated, but it's a storytelling case. So, but it's also, people are much more reluctant to give the death penalty, a juror, much more reluctant to give a death penalty to a purely circumstantial case. So without the forensic evidence, could they have gotten a conviction? They could have. Would have depended on the prosecutor, would have depended on how it played out in trial. But it would have been more difficult without the DNA, much more difficult, because you're now crossing over from circumstantial to a forensic case. And it's, in this case, it would have been sort of a hybrid. But once you take away the DNA, now you're talking about mostly circumstantial case for him. Although there are other pieces of forensic evidence that they would have used, but definitely DNA was the strongest one. If you don't have the DNA, boy, it's going to be tough. You're going to be sweating it because you're going to have very experienced attorneys coming at every one of your witnesses, and you don't have any forensic evidence. You don't have the DNA. Once you, Ashley, you're right. Hindsight is 2020. And again, this is Monday morning quarterback. And I do want to say thank you to the officers.
That experience.
Thank you to the officers. You did a great job. You got the conviction. You got the guy. You did your job. So this is definitely Monday morning quarterbacking, which I don't like. That's why I don't like appellate attorneys, because they're constantly criticizing my work. But yeah, absolutely. And we love law enforcement. We work with,
that's what we do.
Yeah, that's not, look, man.
But we have to learn. They have to learn from this. Would you agree, Billy?
100%.
If nobody points it out to them and they run around saying, hey, look at me, we didn't do anything wrong. And then a guy like me comes around and goes, well, wait a minute. You used the exit that the suspect left as a door coming into the crime scene. That's a mistake. That's a huge mistake. They left the cars for 14 days in the front of the house before they towed them.
Yeah, and some of this it depends on, because there'll be a lot of witnesses. You can set the testifying officers up because that somebody like you is going to get called to the stand, and now I use you to bounce off of them, right? And so hey, Mr. McDonough, Detective McDonough, so would you use the way that the criminal came in and out of the house as your entry control point? No. Well, why not? What could happen? What would be the mistakes? And I would call you at the motions hearing in addition.
Did he lock up again?
And they run the risk of it. Like, if they had called you, it's probably not going to be helpful to them because you know how to answer the questions without hurting the police case. But you're going to call an expert like you and just put you on the stand. So I can shred them on the stand. That's one technique that it's a lot of fun. But you can also just use them to set up a guy like you. Okay, now we're going to talk about, so instead of, doing what I did where I threw the chapters into the trash, no, I just set it up. And then I just remind the jury, in the way that I do, that these are the points that I was trying to point out with that other officer who was not being completely forthright. and I'm not saying any of these officers are liars, right? I'm not
No, I'm
saying
not saying that either.
talking in a hypothetical world here.
Right.
Again, I want to congratulate the officers and thank them for their service, and we got your back, right? But
Yeah.
like you said, if you don't fix these things, you got away with it this time, right? You got away with it. And so, okay, no harm, no foul, right? You got the conviction, light switch turned on. Good for you. You did it. But uh, this is why you practice, practice, practice. You want to make good habits so that because if you practice bad habits, guess what? Next time you're going to have the same thing. Well, nothing bad happened to me last time when I let everybody tromp all over the crime scene. So I'll just keep doing it. So yes, we have to learn. You and I learn, Chris. We're old. We learn all the time. Like I said, I learn a lot from you. So that's what this is. I'm very uncomfortable, and you probably tell it because I'm talking but I'm very uncomfortable criticizing the law enforcement in this case. But I think there are key points that are good lessons learned. And hopefully, and they probably have already done this internally with each other, right? They've already probably done, an after action.
And hopefully they have, but at the same time, they're telling the public that, they're just like blowing it off like there were no mistakes. And you have to be honest with the public, because when all the documents come out like this, and you realize that, wow, wait a minute. Okay, what's going on there? When you tell the public, well, we don't know what the motive is. Okay, well, do you have a theory? I mean, you have an investigative theory. Everybody has an investigative theory, or you're not an investigator. You might as well get out of the business, right? So, but here, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Chris. No, I'm sorry, man. I just interrupted you again. So tell me, just cut my mic when you want me interrupted.
No, you're fine. I mean, you get the DA who comes out and says, well, maybe we'll never know. Well, meanwhile, you have a family sitting back going, well, do you have a theory? I mean, tell us. It's our daughter. We want closure.
Right.
We need closure. At least tell us what you were thinking. Okay.
Yeah.
And a perfect example, the most recent one, is this lieutenant guy. He's a great guy, I'm sure of it. But there's a leak from Dateline NBC where the photographs of Ted Bundy are released, and Dateline mentions him. And on CNN, he's asked specifically, well, what about the phone? Or what's on the phone? Do you know how he answers the phone, or how he answers the question? He politically correctly, dodges the question and says, well, 124 was or 214 was he was skilled in using a VPN, and he erased a lot of documents. Okay, but what about the documents that everybody is talking about? Where are those? And let's talk about that. That's where the journalists wanted to go. Mm-hmm. And he skillfully dodged that piece of the puzzle. Okay. And that is where I think we also have an obligation as law enforcement, and to help the families understand that, that would have been an inappropriate answer. Because if I was asked that question, I was the lead investigator, I would have said, that's a very good question. We found evidence that he had A, B, C, or D. Okay. However, we were not able to, and then tell him what the process was. Okay. Don't shift the gear into like this guy going, well, we're not really sure why we're here today. I mean, in all honesty, that's what the families are left with. And I have a difficult time with that personally.
Yeah, that's no answer. And look, I understand it from a lawyer perspective, from the law enforcement perspective, is that the motive is not an element of the crime, right? If you've got, let's say, 4 elements of a crime, there's not a 5th one that says motive. You absolutely do not have to show motive. You don't have to prove that. So if you want to say, well, we won't ever know, it's not an element of the crime. And there is a risk if you go to trial, and trying to prove a motive, right? Because now you've taken on something you didn't need to take on, and now you got to prove it in trial. And God forbid the defense is able to defeat your motive theory, right? And so then you've hurt your own credibility. But when you're talking about a death penalty, especially in a death penalty case, it's a human condition. We all want to know why. Why did this guy do these horrific things to these beautiful young people? So it's a natural thing. Every single person wants to know why. Even the police in one of the interviews I saw them, they wanted to know why too. They were just unwilling to put their working theory out there. And maybe they had five
Here's
theories.
my question to that thought. Why?
Why what? Why?
Why not put the working theory into the public so that people like this, whose daughter was slaughtered, gets that answer? At least has a place to start so they can start to heal.
Well, and the other thing is, if the prosecution has that document I was referring to earlier,
Yep.
and so they may actually know what the motive is, not just in theory, but they may not. The prosecutor may not have shared that with them. So they will know, but they could talk to the prosecutor. And again, experienced investigators like yourself are going to, if you want to know why, you can go and talk to the prosecutor. Hey, man, can you give me some help on this? We're trying to find the motive, because prosecutor wants to know the motive too. And the reason why in a death penalty case that's important to show a motive, even though it's not an element of the crime, because it's a human desire to want to understand why things happen, right? And if you can't show at least some type of motive, you're probably not going to get a death verdict, right? They're not going to want to kill somebody and still have questions in their mind about, well, yeah, seems like got the evidence, but man, they didn't answer these questions for me. And they don't need, unlike in the guilt innocence or phase, even though it's guilt, not guilty, but even in the guilt innocence phase, you didn't present it. You're probably going to need that when it comes time for sentencing, and sentencing in a death case is where the jury determines whether you get executed or not.
That is a critical point that needs to be emphasized, because you hit the nail on the head. And when you said it earlier, if a jury is going to take the life of somebody, i.e. convict them, and then have the sentencing phase or the death penalty phase where they're going to say, yeah, here's the punishment phase, and say, you know what, we're going to take this guy's life, that it's almost imperative that they understand why they're doing that, right? Mm-hmm. That's what you're saying.
Yep.
Okay. And if they don't have that, then most juries won't punish the guy to death. Right?
Yeah, because you've left something important out there from the human aspect, even though it's not a technical legal aspect of it. You left this thing hanging, and if it's true that they don't even have a working theory, to your point, Chris, what? Are you a professional homicide investigator or not? I mean, you didn't have a working theory on motive. That's where, because it's also going to help you, and you work a lot with this. The victimology, right? What victim did they pick, and why did they pick this victim? But that ties back into motive as well, right? So you're going to need this for a lot of stuff. And you got access, almost unlimited money. I mean, it's not unlimited, but you go hire yourself some profiles. The FBI, I'm sure, worked with them. I know that the FBI worked with them.
Yeah, the BAU was there within the first couple of days.
Yeah. Or get your own mental health professional, or go to somebody and I know they hate to work with people who do both sides, but take a chance. Go talk to somebody who's experienced in both sides and somebody who's on the defense side. Now, don't call me. I'm trying to retire, right? But they need to call somebody. If you don't, that's got to be up there. And okay, I said we're talking about strengths and weaknesses and list our fears. Okay, what's one of your fears? Officer or prosecutor? Well, one of my fears is that we're never going to get a death verdict if we can't show a motive, That's a legitimate fear, right? And my fear is that if somehow they're able to preclude the DNA evidence, we may not win this case. So I get a sure victory with this this life sentence, right? And it came from the defense, so it's a done deal. Usually, when you get those, I think it gave them to them on Friday, and then on Sunday or Monday or something, they accepted and entered the plea. You could do it on the spot. If you've prepped everybody, if you've prepped the victims, if you've prepped the judge, and if you've prepped your client, and they say, okay, you know what? We're here in the courthouse. We'll give you a life offer, life without parole. Okay, we'll take it. Prosecutor will call down to the office, print this plea agreement and bring it up here, because we're going to wait until that's printed, and then everybody's going to review it, and we're going to sign it right now before anybody changes their mind. Anybody meaning the 214, right? So before he changes mind and says, you know what? Nah. So
Do you think the defense smelt that right away? And
what's that?
So do you think the defense, could taste the blood in the water, and they went right to the DA and said, let's go, here it is? The defendant has signed, he wants to go.
A little bit. So they'd already prepped him, obviously, because you're not going to, if you hadn't prepped him, you're not going to sell it in 2 days. And you're not going to be allowed, because he won't let you make that offer to the prosecutor. So he's agreed on that. And look, man, there's a lot of ways to wrap these cases up. And I know, I'm probably not going to heaven for some of the stuff that I did on these cases, but sometimes prayer. You can sit there. You can sit there with the family and your team. They give you a life offer, and you sit there and pray about it, and ask, for guidance. And so, but it can backfire on you. I was doing that with somebody, and they said, "Well,
hold up the sheath on the weapon."
Okay.
Hold up the sheath and tell everybody about that knife.
About the K-bar? Wait, can I finish my story?
Billy was an infantry officer in the Marine Corps. You were a captain, right?
Yeah. So, but Chris, can I say, I'm almost done telling the story.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Sorry, man. It's probably a boring story. That's why you tried to keep it moving. Like, hey, shut up. Let's talk about the sheet. But so I said, okay. So everybody pray, whatever, did you? And the guy, the murderer, says, yeah, God told me to take it to trial. Like, guess what? When I was talking to God, he didn't tell me that. He told me something different. But so any of these things, and somebody would, now you can Monday morning quarterback me on that, do that like the gentleman said a minute ago, 2020 hindsight.
The only thing I'm concerned about, and I'm going to just put my feelings out there, that I'm concerned that 214, that's his inmate number, by the way, for everybody. That's the number we're using. We're not using his name. I'm afraid he's going to tell his narrative, and the families are going to have to hear it in the public court of public opinion, that he's now, because he's not, the defense has said nothing, the prosecution has said nothing. They're, everybody's going around saying, yeah, we got our guy. Okay, well, yes, you did good. Fine. He's in custody, throw him away. But he's going to have access to tell his story. He has a pad in the prison where he gets access to email. And when he's ready, he's going to tell his story. And how many of in the past, how many guys have we seen where they start telling the story? Okay. And now the family is re-victimized because the cops, the prosecution hasn't said, let's sit down and let's talk about what our theories were and why this is important for you to understand. They haven't had a chance to have decompression from this. They got the message on Friday, and on Sunday, the deal was done. And on Tuesday, he was convicted or pled guilty, and boom, he's gone. Okay. And the family's going, Yeah, but what happened to my daughter with, or my son, and I'm speaking in collective for all of the families. Okay. What, okay, fine. We're going to read what you read in through the documents because they're going to get all these documents. But then this guy is sitting back in prison and he's going to write an email to whoever that goes to and whoever that person is. And he's going to say, they got it all wrong. Here's what I did and why I did it.
Yeah.
And he's going to re-victimize the families because he wants to, because there's a gap. There's a communication gap. Go ahead.
Yeah, and that's the only control he has. And these people, as you know, Chris, extremely manipulative. So they become very good at it because they can't do anything but either send a letter, a phone call, or an email, I guess sometimes. But that's their only way. And yet they convince people to marry them. That's how manipulative they are. They get married sitting on death row. So they're very good at being manipulative, and they will re-victimize the family. So yeah, the point you're making is absolutely right about these guys. You've dealt with enough to know. So,
and so that's the only reason I think, and I'm not being critical of. Well, I kind of am. I mean, I'd be dishonest to tell you I'm not being, but at the same time, I'm trying to think of ways to mitigate that risk, and I'm hoping that law enforcement would come out and say, look, we made some mistakes and you know what? We could have done better, but we learned from them. And oh, by the way, here's some of our theories or whatever they were thinking. Okay. Just don't shift the balance of when you're asked a direct question from the media to say, well, he had a VPN and he wiped all his data. Well, no, he didn't. There's a lot of stuff that's still under the gag order that potentially could be released. And what's the public to think when it's released? And they go, well, that's not what they said. Because, right? I mean, initially they said this was a targeted attack. That's what anybody can go back and watch the very first press conferences. You don't have to worry. The community doesn't have to worry. This was a targeted attack. Now that it's over, they say, well, we don't believe anybody specifically was targeted in that house. Well, which one is it? You know?
And it's okay to come out and go, you know what, we thought it was targeted, but then we found out that it wasn't. That was our initial working theory. That's okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you can even admit to the jury in a case that you made a mistake.
Yeah.
You know what? I made a mistake. I could have handled that better. Like, Chris, you've seen me do it in the middle of the courtroom. Like, oh, that was me. Sorry. Move on. But if you try and hide it or obfuscate or just act like it didn't happen, that's when you lose credibility. Jurors are human beings, and they will absolutely forgive you and trust you, and probably more likely to trust you if you're willing to admit to your shortcomings, to your mistakes. Because, I said that, and then I said this, and here's why I said something different, right? And just, do I wish I would have said something different up front? Yeah, probably. But to be honest with you, I agree with their upfront statement. I think it was targeted. I don't see how it's not.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, you have 6 sorority girls living in this house, and you have a guy. I mean, Dr. Mercado and I, Gary, have gone over this a lot, and that's another show. So I don't want to bore you in that lane right now, but because we've got a bunch of questions I want to get to for you. And also show the sheath and tell us about the K-bar. Well, don't show the knife, but show the sheath and explain, because you got that when you were an infantry officer, right? In the Marine Corps.
Yeah, I got this. Well, not this one. My original K-bar I gave to my brother, who was also a Marine. So I gave him my original K-bar. And then because I did that, my mom actually bought this to replace my other one. But these K-bars, there's exact dimensions on them. Hold on, I'll show you the box. I'm not going to show you the knife. But there are dimensions on the box for the K-bar.
Wow.
And that knife is made for killing. That's it. And it's as sharp, you could shave with it. In fact, Chris, that I almost cut the top of my finger off and didn't feel it because it was so sharp. It sliced right through the meat of my finger. And then I'm like, oh my God, like it's bleeding like crazy, but I swear to you, I didn't feel it. That's how sharp the thing is. And it's also perfect because it's got, what's that protective piece that keeps your hand from sliding on it? Because it gets slippery when there's
The
blood.
hilt. It's called the hilt.
The hilt. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the hilt will stop your hand so you don't, let's say you're in a vicious stabbing run. And remember, there were claims that O.J. Simpson had cuts on his hand. Yeah, because he also was not that bright about what he did and used the wrong knife, right? Because now he's cutting his own hand. So this, and on the other end of the K-bar, so on the back end, by the way, it's about a 7-inch, it's a 7-inch blade. And again, the dimensions are right on the box. Anybody can look that up online. They're all the same. The dimensions are all the same. So, but on the end, on the butt end of it is a hard round end, right? And it's about almost 1.5 inches across. And so when I'm just to simulate that this is not the knife, I'm gonna simulate it. So, when you're slashing or stabbing or whatever, this also becomes a weapon is if you strike it like a hammer fist, right? So you can cause damage with the back end of it as well. Just a very lethal knife. And I hope
it can become a blunt force trauma weapon.
Absolutely. And so maybe, you need to get at least a K-bar with the same dimensions and compare that. And they'll have these forensic anthropologists or something. I think that's what they're called. But and they'll do the comparison for the wounds and try to match it. And so what they say in court is generally that, hey, we cannot rule out this particular knife as being the knife, right? Well, is there DNA on it? Is there fingerprints on it? Is there DNA from anybody in the house or him? Right. So, because you do run the risk of losing credibility when they say, well, the defense has proven that was not the knife. But so you have to present it in a way that is, we believe that it is, but it may not be, but it certainly matches the same dimensions as the K-bar that he bought on the internet. So, and then your guy's going to give you that, your forensic guy's going to give you that and say, we cannot rule that out as being the murder weapon. That's just how they state it.
Yeah. And in this case, go ahead. No,
and the same for the other end, the blunt force end. If he's using a hammer fist with slashing, stabbing, and then the hammer fist, you try to match that. They will try to match that to the wounds.
Yeah, I had a caper with Dr. Skip Sperber. I had a homicide where a victim was thrown into a wall. And anyway, long story short, she hit a 2x4. And Doc Sperber said he was at the ME's office. And he goes, hey, would you do me a favor? I said, sure. He goes, bring me the whole wall. So we literally got a Sawzall and cut the wall. And there was an indentation in the wall. In fact, I have a photograph of it. I'll show everybody tomorrow. And Skip matched the indentation on the victim to the 2x4 on the wall. And we took photographs of it, which is really ironic because, and I'm curious at what your thought process here is, in the police reports that were released, a citizen found a K-bar knife. They reported it to the cops. When the officer reviewed it, Officer Payne, who's never worked a homicide in his life, his opinion was it did not match the wounds on the victim. First of all, and your experience, if I would have said that on the stand, what would you have done to me?
Well, I wouldn't even let you testify to that. You're not an expert in that field.
Thank you.
I mean, either side, defense or prosecution. I'm not letting the officer get up there and say that. Well, and if he does say it and he doesn't have any, like he didn't send it off and try to get a forensic guy to match the wound to the shape of this, if he just said, well, I don't think that's it, oh boy, you're toast. You better have a report from somebody that says I compared it. I either can rule it out as the weapon or I cannot rule it out as the weapon. So, but a police officer just making, from the hip. I mean, do they have a lot of K bars running around up there? Is that a lot of people with K bars? Is that you, you got to say it's probably, let's say there's a couple hundred up there, right? And where was this one found? And why would somebody, an expensive, heavy duty, excellent knife, what do they just throw it away? How'd you find it? Like, trust me, I'm not throwing mine away. I may gift it to like my brother, but so where does knife come from? Why did somebody present it to you if that's what happened? What makes you think it was or was not involved in this crime?
Well, here's the report. And for the record for everybody, it's number 167. He was notified a found property call. The knife was located at child play in the trees at the top of Ash Street near Spruce. I responded to look at the knife. The knife was a K-bar brand knife with a blade approximately 4 inches in length. The knife was in a black sheath with cordage wrapped around the handle. This knife did not appear to match the wounds inflicted on all 4 victims.
Well,
why would he say that or do that, even if it's not the knife?
Well, he should. That's not his job. His job is to get the expert to look at it and try to make the comparison. It's not his job to say that. Although, if you know, because he ordered his K-bar off of Amazon, I think. If you know what he ordered and what size it is, if it's a 4-inch knife and not a 7-inch knife, you can say, okay. But who's to say he didn't have 2 knives, right?
Well, and they said that. The cops had said during some of the press conferences he had 2 weapons. Mm-hmm. Is this a second weapon? I don't know. You know what he should have said, everybody, for the record, is this knife was recovered and placed into evidence for evidentiary review.
Yeah, period. And then a note to, we sent it to Dr. So-and-so for the comparison, and here's his report, right?
That's it, right?
Because you also, like when they don't follow up on evidence that people have called in, it's also why it's hard, it become very time consuming to do that work that they do, because you're going to get calls from 4 corners of the world. And so that's for all my flat earth friends. But if you don't follow up, then it looks like you're not doing your job, right? You don't want to take that hit. So you can become bogged down in, these bad leads. And it can be tempting if you see it, well, that's not the knife he ordered online, so I'm ruling it out. Probably shouldn't do that. You probably do exactly what you said. Yeah. Not give your uneducated opinion.
Yeah. And where they get into trouble, you and I and others, thousands of others that would say the same thing, is first of all, the skin is very flexible, and that's why you need an ME to testify. You don't, as an investigator, you can say, you know what, up here, and you can write in your notes in your notebook, but you don't put it in a report and present it to the defense, because at that point, the defense is going to take that and say, well, officer, what training and experience do you have? And, blah, blah, blah. And they just take you down this road where you go, well, none. And the jury's going, well, then why did you say that's not the knife? That it didn't match the wounds? I mean, why are you giving an opinion on the wounds? Number one. Worst case scenario, right? Billy, even in gunshot wounds. Oh, that looks like a 22 or a 45. What?
Well, that's a big difference.
Yeah, and then the doctor scoops out a 38 and hands it to you in your evidence bag, and you go, well, I didn't get that right, did I? No. Yeah. Well, it's like, keep your mouth shut. Go ahead.
Like that case where they speculated that the magazine held 10 rounds. And then he gets on a stand, I hand him 10 rounds in a magazine. I say, okay, load it. Remember? And he was like, oh, I guess it's only 9. Oh, guess what? We can stop listening to you. That's what the jury's thinking. Don't stay in your lane, man. That's a good lesson for them. Stay in your lane, be thorough, be complete, and be honest in your reporting and in your work, right? And it's not it's not the end of the world. It's not like, oh, we're going to fire him for, making a minor mistake, but it's a lesson learned. Like, take that, and now and by the way, now he can go teach somebody else too, right? Because learning, this is how we learn, right? Especially me. I learned by peeing on the electric fence, right? I don't learn because somebody told me, hey, if you pee on that, it's going to electrocute your wiener. I have to actually go out and make the mistake myself. And that's the best kind of learning, right? And guess what? No harm in this case, because you got your conviction, you got a life sentence, and the inmates in the prison will probably take care of that problem for us. And I'm not advising that they do that. I'm not encouraging to do that, but I've just seen it in the past where somebody gets one of these offers and they're like, "Yay, I beat the system." 6 months later, we get a report they're dead. Because
I had a case. Well, I had an experience, and then we're going to get into the comments.
Okay.
Dr. Roger Hegler, he's a forensic anthropologist, world renowned. It's a dig. But the body was buried, and me and this guy are standing over while the doc's in the hole, and he holds up this bone, and he goes, "Chris," I said, "Hey, Doc, what do you got?" He goes, "What kind of bone is this?" And I kept my mouth shut, and I said, "I don't know." And the guy next to me goes, "Oh, that looks like a, whatever it was, a yada, yada, dinga, dinga." And he goes, "Wrong." Just like that. He goes, "Wrong." He goes, "It's a dog bone." And I looked at him and I thought, nice, Sherlock. You just made us look really good here. Okay. Lesson learned.
Yeah.
Don't, in the future, Payne, don't put a knife into evidence and say it does not match the wounds on 4 victims, not 1, but you said 4. Okay. That's a mistake, brother. That's a mistake. It's a big mistake.
Yeah, it is. And to your point, that skin is flexible, and that's why they used to use bite mark evidence. They don't do it anymore, because when the skin folds, you're going to get a different impression, right? You can't match that. So, and a knife is going to be the same way. So if you're pulling your skin this way or that way, it's going to look different, right? Skin is flexible. So usually on these types of things, they try to match it to the bone, right? The bone is not flexible. So if you can get, a cut or a blunt force thing, you can match it to the bone. But the skin, to your point, was right on, like it's flexible.
Yeah. So,
look at Patricia. I like Patricia. I don't know her, but all of a sudden I love her.
Yes, she is awesome. And so let's see here. Ajel, longtime attorney here. Excellent job of explaining the process in accessible detail. Well, thank you. And
Thank
that's
you so
why
much.
he's here this evening. Fascinating and edifying. Thank you for filling in the gap, Sandy. EMC evaluation, mental competency, I think. Is that correct, Billy?
Well, that is one. So competency is a part of it, but competency is usually the judge won't, especially in a death case, the judge won't allow a case to go forward many times unless there's already been a competency evaluation done, because they don't want this thing coming back, in 6 months or doing the trial over. Look at these people. They're so nice. They're very generous. They're like you. They're very generous with their compliments. I appreciate it. Thank you all. But yeah, mental health. And it could be that mental health is a part of the defense, right? So that mental health evaluation could be, so he's mentally ill, but it doesn't rise to the level of a legal defense, but it rises to a level that it can be presented to the jury as mitigation. So maybe you're not, insane, technically insane, but you do have mental health problem. But if you're not competent to stand trial, and I've had quite a few of those, the judge won't let you, because it's just going to come right back. If you get a doctor saying that they're not competent. Now, there are some, Dark Willow. There are some people that you can hire them and they'll just say anything. But usually especially if there's a disagreement on, one doctor says he's competent, another doctor says he's not, they'll ask for a third evaluation, and then they're going to come back. And 9 times out of 10, that comes back, okay, 2-1, he's competent, let's go forward with the trial. There's also a slightly different standard, and I'm not going to go too far down this because it's a little too technical, but you can be technically competent to stand trial, but not competent enough to represent yourself, which is a weird thing. Like, if you've ever argued those motions, it's bizarre that there's 2 standards of competency, basically: competent to stand trial or competent to represent yourself. And I don't mean like law school competent, I mean just general competency. So competency, I don't know I forgot who brought up that competency question, but it's a very, very good point, and thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, and what a great way to answer it. This is a question from Vet Girl, also a vet, amazing human being. She's been with our channel from the beginning. And she's asking, is there a time limit on the filing? And I'm assuming going back to early on in the conversation about how to get information from the mitigation report.
So, Vet Girl, I'm going to make an assumption on what you meant by the time limit on the filing. But if you don't mind, I would appreciate, could you just like send another one, like specifically, because there's a lot of time limits for a lot of things, right? Like there's a statute of limitations for some crime, and murder, there's no statute of limitation. That lasts forever. Is there a statute of limitations for filing a civil suit? There's a time limit on that.
She's got
there you go. That's what I thought you were asking. Thanks, Becker. That's what I thought you were asking. Yes, there are, and then there are ways to get around that. And I do not practice civil law, right? I only know it because, kind of forced to learn it. But there are time limits depending on the jurisdiction, state and federal, depending on that. But yeah, there are time limits for filing civil suits, but there are exceptions to that. And so newly discovered evidence, things like that could not have been reasonably foreseen back within the statute of limitations. So, but that's a question that you'd be better off asking a civil attorney, not me.
Great. Let's see here. You've got a lot of fans here, buddy.
Oh, you have the thing. Every time I come on here, I'm just amazed because I feel like, gosh, I'm getting down in the weeds.
True Girl says nobody's going to the big leagues. And there's a rumor going around I saw in the chat. People are saying, and I don't know if this is true or not, but can we confirm this? That Payne went to work for the university. I don't know if that's true. I have no idea, but that's speculation right now. But can somebody confirm it? And if so, that would be an interesting twist in this particular case. It sure would. Let's see here. What do you think about Steve G., which is the father? Prosecution played the families against each other. Karen L. told him she wouldn't have agreed to life. That's the mother of one of the other victims. If she knew KG was unrecognizable after the document release. You don't think they would have done that, do you, Billy? Or have you seen it done before where the prosecution plays both families against each other to get to the plea deal?
I don't think so. I mean, once the prosecutor decided that he wanted a life offer or a deal for whatever his reasons are, right? It could have been not to re-victimize or re-traumatize the families, to get a guarantee conviction, to keep this guy off the streets, protect the community. A lot of great reasons to enter that plea agreement. And you're not going to waste millions and millions of taxpayer dollars only to have this thing reversed on appeal in 15 years. And we got to go through this again, right? There's a lot of reasons for that. And wow. We talked a little earlier, not on the show.
The chief went to WSU, and we have a FOIA into WSU, and you know what they told us, Bill?
Uh-oh, you cut out. I couldn't hear you. I don't know if everybody heard you or not.
No, that's fine. We have a FOIA into what Washington State University, apparently the chief who handled this went over there, and Laura is a very reliable source. But you know what they told us? We have a FOIA into them for documents. It's going to take 9 months to a year to release the documents to us.
Yeah. Well, you need to take them to court, sue them for that. That's not acceptable. But that's going to take money and a lawyer. So,
yeah. And we're gonna
what I would
them.
say is that usually the news, at least in the old days, the news organizations would take something like this on as a project, and they have
A wall of attorneys.
Thanks, Matey. Is it Matey?
Yeah.
Or Matey? Okay.
Maybe.
Thank you, Matey. So I would, if there's a news organization out there who wants to take this on, I would be very appreciative for that, just to help get some of this information out to the public.
Yes, I agree with you, Montana. He is a great guest. And look here, Laura says, "Thank you for your insight, Billy." And by the way, you've probably seen him on TV. I need his autograph every time I turn around because he's always there. He pops up every once in a while. I'm like, well, there's Billy right there. There he is. Thank you
Thanks,
for
Cindy.
becoming a member. He is a great guest, Montana. I agree with you 1,000%. And Sky Goddess, thank you so much. I agree. I could talk to Billy for days if you haven't noticed. And we've hung out a lot with, a lot. And he's just a super human being.
Oh, look at this. Some new members. Thank you for supporting this channel. Appreciate all of you. And I appreciate the work you do, Chris, too. It's very tough to do what you do, because it always sounds like, not always, but it sounds like criticizing law enforcement, right? And people don't like that. And I don't blame them. I don't like it either. But this is educational. This is learning. This is growing. This is making the world better, right? Making our law enforcement better. We're trying to do something good here. And it comes off as criticism, but I don't know how to phrase it differently. We're just telling the truth from our opinion.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't learn, right? I mean, if you don't learn from your mistakes, then you'll keep making the mistakes and people get hurt.
Yeah, you'll learn bad habits.
Yeah. And you have to sit back and you say, you know what? I have one of my other closest friends who has since gone on. His name is Mark Patine. He was with the DA's office in San Diego for many, many years. Just an amazing mind. I mean, Billy, in my opinion, is the brightest mind in legal matters that I've ever met. And he's right up there with Mark. And anyway, Mark gave me one of the biggest compliments I ever heard in my career years ago. And he says to me, he says, "You know what makes you dangerous, McDonough?" And it was literally like this conversation. And I said, "Mark, I have no idea where you're going, but I heard Billy, in my head." I'm teasing. I said, why are you, what makes me dangerous, Mark? And I wasn't sure where he was going to go. He says, "You think like a defense attorney." He says, "Every time we get a case from you," and where I used to work, they have a high profile, unit that you go up there and there are 15 lawyers in a room, all from the DA's office, and you present your case. And then they determine whether or not they're going to send it on. And then they internally have their own discussions. And if it becomes a death penalty case, that goes directly to the DA and he signs off on it, or she. And Summer Stephan right now in San Diego is the DA down there. And I've worked many cases with Summer. Long story short, he goes, "You think like a defense attorney." And I said, well, and at the time I wasn't sure how to take that. And he says, "Every time you hand me a case or you hand this team a case, you put both sides of the coin in here. And the defense has nothing. Mm-hmm. And it drives them crazy. And you just make my job so much easier."
You're obviously the top guy, in my opinion, that I've ever worked with, right? So because you catch stuff that I don't catch. So you're a better investigator than I am, although I, try to play one every now and then. You're more detail oriented. You will sit there and remember we went to a crime scene and you're like, "Oh, and here's another casing buried in the sand. And here's another." And I'm like, what is this guy? So a human metal detector? How's he finding all this stuff that the police didn't find, that I didn't find, but Chris finds it? I mean, he is that guy. So yeah, I'm very impressed with you. And like I say, I always learn from you.
And vice versa. You know that is a fact.
Yeah.
And okay, so we got a couple more here. Mitigation report sounds like in my sweetheart put is a treasure trove of information on motive and the why.
Yep.
We've got I Love Tacos, gifted one membership. Love that name.
Good. Thank you for supporting Chris. Chris is doing God's work. You guys keep supporting him.
Hyper vigilant eyes. I love it.
Yeah. That's his superpower.
Yeah, a superpower. Well, I'll be. Love prayers to victims' families. May they find peace and all answers they seek. I think BK family are in need of some compassion.
100%. Let's don't forget these families. And another lesson learned just generally for people out there, if you're in the miserable position of being one of these families, contact somebody that has the same experience as me and Chris to help you work through it, because the family could have asked the police and the prosecutor before the plea agreement was there, did they give you this? Did they get this? Can we see it? What's it say? Can you generally tell us what it says? But nobody's going to know that these things even exist till some knucklehead like me gets up here and tells you, oh, by the way, there's a document out there. Well, there is? Yeah. Well, you only know that if you're in this death game. It's helpful.
And anybody can reach out to the Cold Case Foundation. That's why we're here. If you're a victim of a major crime or an investigation, we only get involved for two reasons. One, a law enforcement agency brings us in, or two, a victim's family brings us in. And you get through the door, and then there's an initial assessment coming, et cetera, et cetera. So, and then this question here, were you able to check? Yeah, I did supplemental 50. I saw supplemental 52 where the glove was outside and Thanksgiving Day, and the other one in the pair, blah, 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 and he's taking credit. Well, good for him. But the interesting thing is, in this particular case, is he also highlights a little bit more. He watched the body worn camera. Mm-hmm. What he did not anticipate is a guy like me saying, well, you know what? I watched the news, and Fox News was there before I found the glove. And guess what? The glove is there. It's behind the trash cans in the exact same spot it was. So between that camera shot and the day I found it and the day the cops missed it, I don't know, something's wrong in River City, and I'm going to show that tomorrow night as well.
Yeah, you got to. So you spotted that. They didn't, and the report doesn't reflect that. Again, don't hide. Just tell the truth in your reports. And I'm not saying it was a lie, but he says he found it. Get whoever told you that information. Get their information, include it in the report, and be 100% straightforward. Even if it identifies that, oh, we might have made a mistake on finding this glove. Like, okay, well, you didn't find it, some passerby, whoever. Now, you're not just some passerby, but okay, fine. So what? Just own it. You're not going to see everything. Hell, I don't see everything. I don't see half the stuff that Chris sees. You just got to own that. And it's okay.
And the inference in there is that I planted the glove. I mean, it's like, okay, with my wife with me. Yeah. I want cell number 6 next to 214. Can you make that happen? I mean, it's just foolish. But
you're going to pick up obstruction charges if you start doing that.
I mean, and let's play that through, right? This piece of the puzzle, because you would ask that officer that I told, hey, by the way, you probably want to collect that, and that's exactly how it went down. Mm-hmm. And the guy goes, oh wow. Something to that effect. It was a couple of years ago, but that's what happened. And next thing you know, I said on YouTube, hey, for the record, I saw this glove. I pointed it out to the cops, and it looks like we may have a report on it now. Okay. But the sequence of how it occurred is different now in the report than how it actually occurred real life. What would you do to a detective like that, Billy?
The jury wouldn't listen to him after I got done, because you're going to say it's not, it's not, I wouldn't go as far as to call it a lie, but it's misleading, right? It doesn't tell the whole story. And you're, I might have used the highlighter example, like you said. Okay, so, and I would just walk them through it. So, okay, now here's a glove, yeah, and that was pointed out to you, by someone. And so you know how to handle evidence, you know how to process evidence, to handle the report. I said, okay, here's your report on when you found the glove. You found the glove. Highlight in that report Mr. McDonough's name, who is the person who actually found the glove. Just go ahead. Where is it that he talked to you and he told you?
Yeah, and Kim, would you have rather me not find the glove? Is that your position? I wasn't shooting it for YouTube. I saw the glove. I thought it was a piece of evidence, and I pointed it out to the police. Would you have rather me not find it?
No, this is.
I'm just curious because you're criticizing me there, which is fine. I can handle it. I'm a big boy, but at the same time, I'm going to ask you: would you rather me not have found that glove? You can answer, and I'll put your answer up.
Yeah, and so it's not.
He could have accused the detective of it being planted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They can make the accusation. And what's interesting to me, though, and a little ironic, is that they're impugning a motive to you, right? So somebody who's trying to help, but they don't impute a motive to the killer.
Right.
I mean, and they impute the motive to you because you hurt their ego.
This is how weird social media can be sometimes. Okay, we got a correction here. No, that's not what I meant. Okay, and I apologize if I'm misreading you. So go ahead and clarify so that I can make sure that you and I are on the same track. And I don't care about the criticism personally. I'm good with that. But I want to make sure because, I think the cop messed up, just personal opinion, not important, and, et cetera. So I'm not saying anybody is or isn't attacking. I'm just trying to have a conversation here.
Yeah, it's just really an observation because investigations should be thorough. They should be complete. They should document every thing that could possibly be relevant.
You see? And see, so I was wrong. And I was wrong. So I'm wrong. And I apologize to you on it. And and this is how important communication is, just to the point of him putting in his report of what the sequence of events were. I saw something that came up. I assumed it was part of a sequence of a conversation. And now she's saying, no, Chris, you're wrong. This is what happened. And this is exactly, you have actually made our point. So thank you for putting me through that drill, because you grilled me on the stand just 30 seconds ago for pointing out my mistake.
Well, so what it sounds like, Chris, can you tell me if this is right, that you were videoing your walk around the crime scene? And when in the video, you happen to spot the glove, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the point she's making. Like, you didn't plan it. In fact, your reaction to finding the glove is right there on video for the whole world to see. Kim brought up a good point. Chris, now we're going to let her host the show next time. I want to talk to Kim. She's smart.
Please. And thank you, Kim, for actually keeping me in line. So you are the best. And I didn't mean to be inconsiderate on that concept, but I do have the best guest. I'm not sure who you're referring to, but you're correct. I absolutely do have the best guest on this channel, 100%. And we have the best folks in chat.
Thank you, Mary.
Who keeps us moving. Let's see here.
Yeah.
Learning from mistakes is a fact of life. Yes, it is. Crazy Mom RN. I love these names, Billy. These are most amazing people.
I'm so old and uncreative. I just use my name.
Thank you, Susie, for being a new member. We're grateful. Let's see here. Do you think in his case he was born that way or was nurture part of it? I can't imagine any amount of love as a baby and child changing him.
Right. And you're actually making the point we were discussing earlier, that it's so hard for us as rational, normal, so whatever that is, people, to understand the thinking in these minds, right, that are not processing it the way that we do, right? So she's grasped. I assume it's a she. I don't know why I assume it's a she, but so yeah, you're struggling with the same thing we do, trying to understand this guy, and that's a profession in itself, understanding these people. So yeah, we struggle with the same thing as you do, and it's like, well, if he was born this way, no amount of love is going to change that, right? That's using a rational mind. That's not using a criminal mind. So it's possible he was born this way. I've seen these cases where they have their brain schizophrenic or psychotic snap. It usually happens around 20. Love it.
Laura,
Yeah,
thank you.
nailed you.
That's 1,000%. 1,000%.
So,
Okay, so Billy, we got also. I just got just one more. They're
right.
just there's some of the reports. It says that, and I did read those, that there was some weirdness going on 2 weeks before the murders in the back of that house, and so people are thinking that, is that another creeper or was that actually, our guy? That's a great question because the police documented it and they must have been thinking that too. And thank you, Perpetual. You are so kind for saying what you just did, that we're doing God's work.
You and Karen are doing God's work, and I'm so thankful for you. You're a real asset to the community, and I'm just here to bring you water when you want it, so you can tell me how to fix these cases.
Oh my gosh. I love him. And that's why they call us Starsky and Crutch. Again, I'll let you decide who the crutch is. It's definitely not the guy on the right in your frame. Murphy was not barking. Yeah. There's a lot of weirdness going on. But so Billy, great conversation tonight. You get the last word. Any thought process that's going through your mind?
I want to reiterate my comment about the police and the investigators up there. Thank you for doing this job. It's a difficult job. You're going to get criticized by all kinds of people. And that's just goes with the job. So thank you to the law enforcement up there. Thank you to the prosecutor. Mission accomplished. You got this guy off the streets. And Chris, thank you and Karen so much for the service you guys provide. I like clutch better because I'm a car guy. And also,
tell them about the car. Tell them about the car real fast before you get off.
Which one?
The one where you went out and found the car, the Starsky and Crutch car.
Oh yeah.
I thought you were going to buy it. I could have sworn one day you would have pulled up in my driveway and bump, and it had the radio and everything. Had the radio and everything.
I might do that. So I'm a car guy, so I go to a lot of car shows with my cars and sometimes just to see the other cars. But let's don't forget all these people who are saying these great things. I don't say this because they're just saying nice things. I appreciate the criticism. That helps me learn. But what a great educated group of people you have that follow you, man. Because a lot of this stuff, your average person is not going to understand, but your audience gets it right off the bat. And so it's always fun to talk in front of.
These are great people, as you can tell.
They're amazing people. And so let's keep making the world better.
They love the conversation. Go ahead.
Yeah. Let's all keep working together to make this a better place in this world, and not doing it for money or recognition. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do. So let's keep doing that and supporting our law enforcement.
Absolutely. And thank you so much, Linda Jane. That's because when I was born, they slapped my mother. And that's where the comedy came from. My mom was pretty funny, actually, back in the day. And when they rolled me over and at birth and told my mom she had twins. So Billy and I, on behalf of each of us, we are so grateful to all of you who have been here tonight. And Billy, you ready to go to Hawaii?
I am. I love you, Chris. I really do. You're my brother. That never changes.
I love it. Okay,
Ciao.
folks, thank you. Aloha. See you in a minute. Continue to be kind to one another and keep calling me out as we move forward. Have a good one.
Hard working every day, I'm stressed out 24/7, babe. No timeouts, wish we could fly away. You and I go to our favorite place. Oh yeah, make special memories together. I'll be your company now and forever. I say we fly away, you and me, go to our favorite place. Feeling the sun on my face in Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. I need a summer breeze, some fresh air to put my mind at ease. No cares. You wanna come with me? Me and you go to our favorite tree. Are you ready now? We jump on a plane now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. Don't hesitate now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. We'll never come down. We're going away. Yeah, we're going away. You and me. Feeling the sun on my face in a while.